Hey everyone, welcome to the human side of hospitals. I'm so glad you are here. And now on this channel, we don't just talk about medicine, we listen to real people, to patients, to doctors, nurses, caregivers, anyone who has an unforgettable hospital experience. The hospitals can be places of healing, hope, sometimes even heartbreak, and every story has something to teach us. That is why I'm starting this, just to give people a space to share, to be heard, and to remind us that behind every hospital wall are human beings with stories worth telling. Now, here's where you come in. So, if you've ever been a patient, if you've worked in a hospital, or if you've supported a loved one through their hospital journey, I would love to hear from you. And you can send me a short video, audio, just write your story down. Or if you would like to sit and chat with me, you can join me live on Zoom. And all you have to do is just fill the form in the description below, or you can send me an email. And it doesn't matter where you are from, who you are, or whatsoever. You are welcome wherever part of the world you come from. And before we dive in, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn the notification bell. Basically, not to miss these incredible voices from around the world. And a quick disclaimer before we start: these stories, they're personal stories shared with full consent, and we are here just to inspire, educate, and raise awareness. One thing is, those who want to remain anonymous, well, for the sake of confidentiality and privacy, altered some of their voices into AI voices. And note that even the advice shared in these videos or in these experiences, they are not a substitute for medical advice. Always remember this. And if you have health concerns, always speak to a qualified healthcare professional. Alright, let's dive into today's story.
This is Dr. Rebecca Walsh. I'm making this recording for reasons I hope will become clear. I was chief pathologist at the Metropolitan Medical Examiner's Office in Portland for 18 years. I performed over 4,000 autopsies during my career. I thought I had seen every possible way a human body could fail, be damaged, or die. I was wrong. 6 months ago, I submitted my resignation and moved to a small cabin outside Bend. I tell people it's early retirement, that I wanted a quieter life. The truth is I left because of what I found during my final autopsy, a case that challenged everything I understood about human anatomy and death itself. I need to tell someone what really happened, even if no one believes me. The case began on January 12, 2024, when Detective Maria Rodriguez brought me what appeared to be a routine, suspicious death. A 34-year-old male found deceased in his downtown apartment. No obvious signs of trauma, no suicide note, no known medical conditions. The scene suggested natural causes, but something about the circumstances warranted a full autopsy. The deceased was identified as Marcus Kim, a software engineer who lived alone. His landlord discovered the body after Kim missed several days of work and didn't answer phone calls. The apartment was undisturbed, no signs of struggle or forced entry. Kim was found seated at his computer desk, apparently having died while working. What struck me immediately was his appearance. Most people who die suddenly show signs of distress, especially if they experience pain or difficulty breathing. Marcus Kim looked peaceful, almost serene. His eyes were closed, his face relaxed, his hands positioned naturally on his keyboard, as if he had simply dozed off. I began the external examination, following standard protocol. Kim was a healthy-appearing male, approximately 6 feet tall, average build, no obvious injuries or abnormalities. His skin tone was normal for someone who had been deceased approximately 48 hours. No petechial hemorrhages in the eyes, no defensive wounds, no track marks or other signs of drug use. But as I continued the examination, I noticed something unusual about his fingernails. They were perfectly clean, which wasn't remarkable in itself, but they showed a strange pattern of growth. The nail beds appeared to have multiple distinct growth lines, as if the nails had grown and been cut repeatedly. repeatedly over a very short period. When you work in pathology for nearly 2 decades, you develop an instinct for what's normal and what isn't. Something about those fingernails bothered me, though I couldn't articulate why at the time. I documented this finding and proceeded with the internal examination. The moment I made the first incision, I knew something was fundamentally wrong. The subcutaneous tissue showed an unusual pattern of organization. Instead of the typical fatty layer you would expect, Kim's tissue had a fibrous, almost geometric structure. It wasn't pathological in any recognizable way, but it was unlike anything I had encountered in my career. I called in Dr. Michael Stevens, my deputy pathologist, for a second opinion. "Rebecca, I have never seen tissue architecture like this," he said after examining the incision site. "It's almost like the connective tissue has been deliberately reorganized." We continued the examination together, photographing every step. When we opened the thoracic cavity, we found Kim's organs in perfect condition. His heart showed no signs of disease, his lungs were clear, his liver appeared normal, but the positioning was slightly off. His heart was centered in the chest cavity in a way that suggested it had been carefully placed rather than naturally developed. "Michael, look at the great vessels," I said, pointing to the major arteries and veins connected to the heart. "The branching pattern is textbook perfect, too perfect. You see, normal human anatomy has slight variations and imperfections. Evolution doesn't create perfectly symmetrical systems, but Kim's cardiovascular system looked like it had been designed by an engineer rather than developed through biological processes." We removed the heart for closer examination. Its weight was exactly 310 grams, perfectly within normal range for a male of Kim's size. But when we sectioned it, we found something that made no medical sense. The cardiac muscle fibers were arranged in a pattern I had never seen in 18 years of practice. Instead of the typical spiral organization that develops during fetal heart formation, Kim's heart muscle was laid out in precise geometric patterns. Hexagonal arrangements that repeated throughout the tissue like a microscopic honeycomb. "This can't be natural," Michael whispered as we examined the sections under magnification. "It's like someone rebuilt his heart using human tissue, but with a completely different architectural plan." I sent tissue samples to the histology lab for detailed microscopic analysis while we continued the autopsy. Kim's other organs showed similar anomalies. His liver had lobular patterns that were too regular, too organized. His kidneys showed nephron arrangements that were geometrically perfect but biologically implausible. Most disturbing was his brain. When I removed Kim's brain, it weighed exactly 1,400 grams, again perfectly normal. But the surface anatomy was wrong. The gyral patterns, the folding of the cerebral cortex that gives the brain its wrinkled appearance, were too symmetrical. Human brains have unique folding patterns like fingerprints, but Kim's brain showed bilateral symmetry that doesn't occur in nature. I called Dr. Jennifer Park, a neuropathologist at the university, and asked her to consult on the case. "Rebecca, are you certain about the documentation of this case?" she asked after examining the brain sections. "These patterns suggest developmental abnormalities that would be incompatible with normal cognitive function. This person should never have been able to work as a software engineer or function normally in society." But according to all records, Marcus Kim had been a highly functioning individual. He held a computer science degree from a prestigious university, worked for a major tech company, and had no history of cognitive impairment. The histology results came back 3 days later and only deepened the mystery. Under microscopic examination, Kim's tissues showed cellular organization that was impossible according to everything I knew about human biology. His neurons were arranged in perfect hexagonal arrays. His muscle fibers showed crystalline-like alignment. Even his blood cells, examined post-mortem, displayed geometric patterns in their distribution. "Rebecca, I think we need to involve other specialists," Michael suggested. "This is beyond pathology. We're looking at something that challenges basic biological principles." I contacted Dr. Helen Brennan, a forensic anthropologist, and Dr. Kevin Torres, a biochemist. When they examined our findings, their responses were identical. What we were documenting was scientifically impossible. Dr. Walsh, Dr. Brennan said, after reviewing our photographs and tissue samples, You're describing anatomical features that would require deliberate construction. These patterns couldn't develop naturally through human embryogenesis. Dr. Torres was more direct. Either your documentation is flawed, or you're examining something that isn't entirely human. I spent the next week reviewing every aspect of the case. I re-examined all tissue samples, verified all measurements, and consulted with additional specialists. The conclusion was always the same. Marcus Kim's body showed evidence of anatomical organization that was impossible for a naturally developed human being. But the most disturbing discovery was yet to come. 2 weeks after completing the autopsy, I received a call from Detective Rodriguez. Dr. Walsh, we have a problem with the Kim case. I have been investigating his background, and I'm finding inconsistencies that don't make sense. She explained that while Marcus Kim had extensive documentation of his life, employment records, educational transcripts, tax filings, none of it held up to detailed scrutiny. His university had no record of him attending. His employer couldn't provide specifics about his work or colleagues who remembered working with him directly. It's like someone created a complete false identity with perfect documentation, but no actual history, Rodriguez said. I asked her to send me everything she had found about Kim's background. What I received was disturbing. Kim's apartment had been rented for exactly 3 years. Before that, there was no record of him anywhere. His social security number was valid, but had only been used for the past 3 years. His driver's license, credit cards, bank accounts, all dated back exactly 3 years and no further. Most unsettling were the photographs Rodriguez found in Kim's apartment. They showed him at various locations around Portland, but always alone, never with other people, never in candid social situations. They looked like documentation photos rather than personal memories. Detective Rodriguez, I said during our meeting, I need to ask you something that might sound strange. Are you absolutely certain Marcus Kim was human? She stared at me for a long moment. Dr. Walsh, what exactly did you find during that autopsy? I explained our findings in detail. The impossible anatomical perfection, the geometric organization of tissues, the microscopic patterns that couldn't occur naturally. Rodriguez listened without interrupting, but I could see the skepticism growing in her expression. Doctor, are you suggesting that Kim was some kind of artificial construct, like a robot or android? I'm not suggesting anything specific. I'm telling you that the body I examined couldn't have developed through normal human biological processes. How that's possible, I don't know. Rodriguez agreed to keep the case open while we continued investigating. But 3 days later, she called with news that would effectively end my career in pathology. Dr. Walsh, the Kim case is being transferred to federal authorities. I have been instructed to turn over all evidence and documentation. I'm also being told that your findings were the result of laboratory contamination and equipment malfunction. That's impossible. We used multiple techniques and independent verification. Doctor, I'm reading from an official report that states your tissue samples were compromised during processing, and your microscopic findings were artifacts of improper preparation. The case is being reclassified as death by natural causes due to an undiagnosed cardiac condition. I demanded to see the federal report, but Rodriguez explained that she didn't have access to the details. The case was being handled by agencies she couldn't identify, and she had been ordered not to discuss it further. The next morning, I arrived at the medical examiner's office to find that all evidence from the Kim case had been removed. The tissue samples, the photographs, the microscopic slides, even my written reports had been confiscated. According to the official record, Marcus Kim had died of sudden cardiac death, and the autopsy had revealed no unusual findings. Stevens met me in my office that morning with a strange expression. Rebecca, I need to tell you something, but I want you to know I think I might be losing my mind. What is it, Michael? I don't remember working on the Kim case with you. I mean, I know we worked on it because I have some notes in my handwriting, but I can't recall the actual examination. It's like my memory of those days has been erased. I showed him the photographs I had taken during the autopsy, images I had stored on my personal camera rather than the office equipment. Michael studied them carefully, but his expression remained confused. Rebecca, these photographs show normal anatomy. I don't see anything unusual about this heart or brain tissue. I looked at the images on my camera screen. Michael was right. The photographs that had clearly shown impossible geometric patterns now appeared completely normal. The tissue architecture looked like standard human anatomy. "This can't be right," I said, scrolling through the images. These photographs showed clear anomalies just days ago. But every image appeared normal. Either my memory was failing, or someone had replaced my photographs with altered versions. That afternoon, I received a visit from two individuals who identified themselves as federal investigators. They wore standard business suits and carried credentials from an agency I didn't recognize. "Dr. Walsh, we need to discuss the Kim autopsy case," the taller man said. "We understand you have been experiencing some confusion about your findings." "I'm not confused about anything. The body I examined showed anatomical impossibilities that I documented thoroughly. Doctor, we have reviewed your work, and we believe you may have been suffering from stress-related perceptual issues. The Kim case involved routine findings consistent with natural death." The shorter man opened a briefcase and removed a folder. "We have documentation from multiple specialists confirming that your tissue samples showed normal human anatomy. There were no geometric patterns or unusual organization. They showed me reports supposedly from Dr. Park, Dr. Brennan, and Dr. Torres, all stating that they had found nothing unusual about the Kim case. But I remembered their reactions clearly. They had been as mystified as I was. Dr. Walsh," the taller man continued, "we strongly recommend that you take some time away from your position to address these stress-related issues. We have spoken with your supervisor about arranging a leave of absence." "Are you threatening me? We're offering you an opportunity to step away gracefully from a situation that could damage your professional reputation. Sometimes the stress of this work can cause experienced pathologists to see patterns that aren't there." They left contact information and suggested I consider their offer carefully. That evening, I called Dr. Park to verify her report, but her assistant informed me that Dr. Park had no recollection of consulting on any case involving unusual anatomical findings. I spent the next week trying to contact everyone who had been involved with the Kim case. Dr. Brennan claimed she had never examined tissue samples showing geometric patterns. Dr. Torres insisted he had only provided routine biochemical analysis. Even Detective Rodriguez seemed confused about the details of our previous conversations. It was as if everyone's memory of the unusual findings had been altered, leaving me as the only person who remembered what we had actually discovered. I realized I had three choices: insist on the truth and be labeled as mentally unstable, accept the official explanation and continue my career, or leave pathology entirely. I chose to leave. I submitted my resignation citing personal reasons and moved to Oregon. For 6 months, I tried to convince myself that maybe I was wrong, that stress had caused me to misinterpret normal findings as something impossible. But last week, something happened that confirmed my worst fears. I was in Bend, shopping for groceries, when I saw him. Marcus Kim, the man I had performed an autopsy on 6 months earlier, was standing in the produce section examining apples. I approached him carefully, not trusting my own perception. "Excuse me, are you Marcus Kim?" He looked at me with mild curiosity. "No, I'm sorry, I think you have me confused with someone else." But it was him. The same face, the same build, the same unusual perfection in his features that I had noted during the autopsy. "I'm Dr. Rebecca Walsh. I'm a pathologist. I think we may have met before." His expression changed subtly, becoming more alert. "Dr. Walsh, yes, I believe I know of your work. You recently retired from the Metropolitan Medical Examiner's Office." "How do you know that?" "Information travels quickly in certain circles. I understand you handled some interesting cases during your career. What do you know about the Marcus Kim case?" He smiled, and for the first time, I noticed that his expression had the same unnatural perfection as his anatomy. "Dr. Walsh, you performed excellent work on that case. Very thorough, very observant, perhaps too observant for your own good. You're supposed to be dead. I performed your autopsy. You performed an autopsy on a body that served its purpose. When our research was complete, that particular form was no longer needed." "Your research?" "We study human biology by inhabiting human forms. It allows us to understand your species from the inside, literally. The Marcus Kim form was designed to test how closely we could replicate human anatomy while maintaining our own organizational principles. I felt like I was going insane. What are you? We're researchers, Dr. Walsh. We come from a place where consciousness and biology operate differently than on your world. We create these forms to study human society and physiology. Why are you telling me this? Because you have already figured it out, and because your career in pathology is over anyway. You can't return to your old life knowing what you know. He was right. Even if I tried to go back to pathology, I would always be looking for signs of the impossible, always wondering if the next body might be another construct. The memories of the others, the altered photographs, how did you do that? Memory is more malleable than your species realizes. We can adjust human recollection when necessary to maintain our research protocols. Why wasn't my memory altered? Because you were the primary observer. We needed to understand how a trained pathologist would interpret our anatomical design. Your reaction was part of the experiment. I stood there in the grocery store, realizing that my entire professional crisis had been orchestrated as part of some alien research project. What happens now? Nothing happens, Dr. Walsh. You continue your retirement. You don't discuss this conversation with anyone. And occasionally, you might encounter other forms like Marcus Kim, but you will recognize them for what they are. How many of you are there? Enough to conduct thorough research. Your species is more complex than we initially understood. We have been studying you for longer than you might imagine. He turned to leave, then paused. Dr. Walsh, for what it's worth, you should be proud of your work on the Kim case. You identified anomalies that most pathologists would have missed. Your observational skills are exceptional. He walked away, leaving me standing among the produce displays, wondering how many other impossible cases I had missed during my career, how many other bodies I had examined without recognizing what they really were. I drove home and immediately began making this recording. I needed to document what happened, even if no one ever believes it. I don't know if I will ever encounter another one of these entities. I don't know how many are walking among us, conducting their research into human biology and society. But I know I can't return to pathology. Every body I examined would make me wonder if I was looking at human remains or something else entirely. I sleep better now, living in the mountains away from the city. But sometimes I catch myself studying the people I encounter in town, looking for that subtle perfection that might indicate they're not entirely human. And sometimes I think I find it. The recording equipment is running low on memory, so I will end this here. If anyone ever finds this recording, know that there are things walking among us that we don't understand, conducting research for purposes we can't comprehend. They can alter memories, replace evidence, and make experienced professionals question their own competence. Most importantly, they can die and then continue their research in new forms, leaving pathologists like me to document impossible anatomies that no one will ever believe. This is Dr. Rebecca Walsh, signing off. End of recording. Note found with recording. This audio file was discovered on a digital recorder in Dr. Walsh's abandoned cabin near Bend, Oregon, in September 2024. Dr. Walsh disappeared from her residence sometime in late August. Her whereabouts remain unknown. The Metropolitan Medical Examiner's Office confirms that Dr. Osei Walsh was a highly respected pathologist who resigned from her position in January 2024, citing personal reasons. They have no record of any unusual autopsy findings during her tenure.